Jenny, in addition to your extensive client base in Australia, I know that you have been called upon to travel to several developing countries to do training and also do consultancy work there. Some of the countries I know that I've read about where you've worked include Indonesia. You've recently returned from India. You did some work in Ethiopia not too long ago. I know that you're returning to Uganda soon. And of course, you've worked in South Africa before. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe some lessons you've learned working with people in developing countries and how it differs in terms of science communication in developed countries?
Well, I'd say it's more similar than different, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm. That's good to know.
Although, as someone coming from a Western country in an Australian context, I have to be aware that things have a different cultural context. And so that really guides everything. But I think the key lesson that I've learnt from working in developing countries is that the best science communication, regardless of the cultural context, is about storytelling.
All right.
And telling stories. So, for example, I was pulled in to help a whole lot of researchers and facilitators in a group known as Land Care to write a book about land care in the Philippines. And this is a process whereby they've combined technology with local government, with farmers, to help poor farmers in upland areas to conserve their soil on their properties, which helps them in terms of being able to grow more, being able to grow vegetables for the family, and also keep the soil on the land instead of washing off into beautiful ocean and coral reefs. And initially they just wanted a sort of almost like a manual or a fact book of all the facts that had happened, the history of it and the facts that had happened and the processes that they'd used. But I suggested that instead of that, we let the people tell their stories and put boxes of facts in the stories. And that was wonderful. They agreed to that, which was fantastic. They'd never ever funded anything like that before. And they agreed to this. This Australian International Research Organisation agreed to fund this book in this manner, which they'd never done before with any of the agricultural research across the world. And we were able to work with local people to get local people to tell their stories, which was just wonderful because we heard these people's voices. And I think that's a really important thing, is to remember that there's a lot of local knowledge and local stories that are so valuable. And this is something I have to remember even in my own country, but it's even more so, I think, in developing countries about stories. The other thing that I think is really interesting is that each of these different cultures has a love of their own art, their own music, their own entertainment. Mm-hmm. And I never go to the Philippines without being dragged into karaoke at some stage. Right. When I was in Ethiopia, we had a big farewell night for our training of scientists from 8 different African countries. And we went along to a traditional Ethiopian dance night. And I was up there with the scientists learning their dance. And it was wonderful. And it had really helped to develop that relationship and understand the culture better, which was wonderful. And I think a really important lesson for me, coming from a largely Christian white Western country, is that every country has their own values, beliefs and religions. Mm-hmm. And they are different to mine and the majority of my fellow men, but it doesn't mean they're wrong. And sometimes these values and beliefs and religion things affects the way in which you tell the science story. And so I think you need to be respectful of that when you're looking at the message of science that you get out in that process.
So storytelling and local knowledge, I think key things, and valuing people's cultures and rather, I think, use it to the benefit of science communication rather than trying to suppress it or bypass it.
Absolutely,
I think it's very, very important lessons.
And enjoy it. I mean, I don't normally do karaoke or do dancing.
Yeah, but
it was a wonderful experience and made me understand the culture better, and I think hopefully translates better to the way in which I train scientists, the way in which I communicate about their science.
I think certainly in the African context, the idea of diversity is key, and embracing diversity and using it to make science communication stronger. And if we can get better at bringing dance and theatre and storytelling and humanizing into the science, I think it can only benefit all of us.
Absolutely.
Thank
and
you
it
very
can
much.
be fun too.
Definitely. Thank you, Jenny.